Oh,
Hello, everyone. Hi, Susheela. How are you?
well, I am good despite, Mercury's just like, don't forget about me. I'm gonna mess with your technology. So
Till
yeah.
the very end. Till the very, very end. And the
Yeah.
reason we're saying this is that Mercury is still in its post-retrograde shadow phase. It doesn't come out of that till November 2nd. Today is October 31st. We tried a live recording of the second episode of our podcast and it just didn't happen.
It didn't want to play. It
It
didn't
didn't want to
play
play.
nice. It was just like, I'm still a big influence and I'm gonna sit here and be pouty. That's Mercury for you.
Right, right,
I'm just a wee little planet, but I'm gonna be pokey. Yeah.
right. I'm gonna make you notice me.
So yes, we'll work out those glitches once Mercury moves away. So if you are watching this, that means we successfully recorded it and YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. And so welcome to our November forecast. I am Millie Murillo. This is the amazing Susheela Kundargi. Yes. And we're here to talk about all things November. Um, it's important to understand where we're coming from and what October did and what October looked like, the first half versus the second half. If you saw our October forecast, you know that we talked about that, about the stark difference between the first half of the month and the second, right? And how in the second half of the month, things were going to start speeding up. And we were going to have this sense of really wanting to move forward. But here comes November. Here comes heavy Scorpio season. Here comes eclipse season. Here comes the first eclipse of the Taurus Scorpio axis. So, anything you want to touch on before we start?
Yeah, I mean, we've both been talking about it since our October forecast with everybody we've encountered and getting that feedback from people too that that Mercury retrograde was not any old Mercury retrograde. It's like
Right.
all the usual stuff, every glitch known to humankind happened. And no matter what you did, something happened. Everything from people losing their passports to
Yes.
losing their keys, the alarms not going off or sleeping through alarms, computers not working, all the typical stuff. And it was all this Libra stuff going on. So then it caused all this weird tension in relationships. And I heard back from a lot of people that they took our advice and decided to just zip it so that
Yeah.
nothing would get miscommunicated and just stay back and try and work through that. And I think a lot of people were really exhausted for that first half, and I described it as trudging through quicksand in a concrete bodysuit. It was tough. It was exhausting. And then finally that concrete started to chip away as we got
Right.
through, and we got flung out into space. It felt like on a slingshot. And there was that point too where you're getting pulled back, you're like ready to go, and then it's like, whoa, I can't even catch up. And so people were exhausted again because Mercury went away and they thought everything was just going to be peachy once that happened and all those planets going direct, and then
Right. Right.
launched forward. So it's I think been a little tricky.
I think so. And I think that the transition from heavy Libra energy into intense, profound, deep Scorpio energy is pretty stark. That is one of the cusps in the zodiac that I find really fascinating. Because we go from Libra, which is about the form, which is about keeping things balanced, right? Sometimes with keeping up appearances, sometimes not rocking the boat too hard.
Yeah.
And that Mercury retrograde really turned that around. We didn't, I don't know, we couldn't upkeep with appearances and the appearance of perhaps lying to ourselves about a certain dynamic in a relationship. We could no longer just keep this frame that looked like it was working when underneath it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so now that which we discovered, the lack of balances in our relationships, the lack of balance within ourselves, all of the stuff, all of the gunk, as I like to call Scorpio energy, the shadow that it brings up. Now it's time to look within. Now it's time to really go deep and profound. And so I wanted to, and I'll touch more on this as we go through, but this is important. It's important to recognize that the energy that's being lit up this month is energy that is going to take us back to some conversations that we may have had in July and August during Leo season, because it's going to activate the fixed signs of the zodiac. It's going to reactivate that pain in the butt square that has been Saturn and Uranus, Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. Yeah. It's going to beat all of that. Yeah.
And it's what I noticed as well, coming through that Libra, trying to regain balance. It was almost like, if you can imagine yourself standing on top of a seesaw, right at the middle and keeping one foot here and one foot there. If you had neglected anything from February or the previous Mercury retrograde, beginning of June, moving forward, thinking like, I don't have to deal with my shadow side. Oh, I dealt with that 7 years ago. It's been a long time. All that stuff that we didn't pay attention to, and you and I talked about this as well. All of a sudden it appeared, and out of nowhere, and there it is. And it's like some of us may still have ignored it or have ignored parts of that. And now we're hitting this shadow part, and it's there. It's that shadow part is illuminated.
Right.
Boom. It's got to be dealt with at this point, one way or the other. If we don't deal with it, it will deal with us.
Exactly. And the clarity that we may have lacked, we no longer really lack. Like whatever is meant to come up and be worked through in November, we pretty much know. And so it's time to get started. It's time to really stop resisting.
Yeah, we can't hide from it at this point. It's
exactly.
Right there. It's right there.
Right.
It's going to either weigh you down or you have to chisel away at it, one or the other.
Right. Okay, so
let's dive in.
We'll begin. Let's dive in. If you see me looking to the side, it's because I have my notes here.
Yeah.
So we begin the month off, really November 1st and 2nd, with Mercury in Libra, okay, making its final square to Pluto in Capricorn, and making its final trine to Jupiter in Aquarius. So things to keep in mind following the process. On September 22nd was the first time that Mercury in Libra squared Pluto in Capricorn. On October 1st was the second time that Mercury retrograde in Libra squared Pluto in Capricorn. On September 20th was the first time that Mercury in Libra trine Jupiter. Jupiter was retrograde in Aquarius. And on October 4th was the second time that Mercury in Libra retrograde trine that Jupiter in Aquarius. So this final square and trine that we are experiencing now has been happening since September. Both have happened within 2 days, a few days apart from one another. So what does this mean? So we have this square between Mercury and Pluto. This is about difficult conversations, serious conversations, conversations that need to be had. They have to, because Pluto is incredibly direct. Mercury in Libra is really good at negotiating. It's really good at talking to another person. It's really good at being the person who keeps things, who keeps both sides of the story, right? Who keeps both sides in mind. Now that trine to Jupiter in Aquarius is about, if we have the difficult conversations, if we talk about the things that we're trying to not talk about for some reason, we can expand and we can grow and we can have a different perception. Why did I give you all those other dates? So that you go back and somehow in your journals, in your calendars, in your text messages, look back at what conversations you were having at the time and pay attention to the resolutions that come from those conversations on November 1st and 2nd.
And interestingly enough, so, you know, you and I, we only know the aspects prior to us meeting here.
Right. This is so fun.
It's always so fun.
Yes.
What pops up is just so fitting. If I looked through and tried to find the perfect card to match up, I don't think I would do it as well.
Right.
So we're looking at the Hanged Man, and it's this feeling of, you know, it's never anything severe, but
Right.
you're hung up. You're hung up. You are caught in this moment. Okay, so it's a change in perspective, and you almost literally said those words. You know? So all that time, here we are, something you're trying to do, something you're trying to work through. Maybe it's something you're trying to ignore. Whatever it is, it's in limbo because it's not fully being addressed, whether you can fully address it intentionally, whether you're wanting to and circumstances don't allow you to, the other party who you want to communicate doesn't want to communicate with you, whatever that is, the situation is in limbo. And then it's this changing your perspective of, how do I see the other side? Maybe I wasn't looking at the other side. Maybe if I had opened my mouth at the time, maybe staying quiet was the safest thing to do because I couldn't see the other side. If I said something, maybe it would be misinterpreted. So that time waiting, hanging upside down, just waiting for the stuff to move. And here we are now of like, well, what can I see from this place? Like, instead of fighting it, what can I actually see? How does this affect me? How does this change my worldview? How does this worldview reflect what's going on inside of me? And that's what we have from the tarot on that subject, which is, it's really funny. And everybody's, you know, looking at you and you're looking at everybody, but it's different. It's a different. And I think maybe too, at the beginning of November, we also don't feel the same. We don't feel like we're the same person anymore. That's the other interesting thing with this card.
Right. And it's important to remember that on November 2nd, like I mentioned earlier, Mercury goes out of its post-retrograde shadow. On that, like on its way out, it's having, you know, it's on the very last degrees of Libra. So it's on those very last degrees. The last degrees of any sign represent like a mastering and an understanding of that sign. But it's not just going from Libra onto Scorpio. It's like making an exit. It's making an aspect to two big leaguers in the sky, Pluto and Jupiter, two masters and teachers of the zodiac, so that we understand what we're going into in November. It's making quite an exit.
Big time. And also, you know, this is part of the major arcana. So they are more life purpose type of archetypal cards. These are not the little things that happen. These are the big things. This is seeing something from a different perspective. It's a paradigm shift. It's not just, well, I'm going to shop at this grocery store instead of that grocery store. Now it's not those little things. It's the big things. And it's like, once you know, you can't unknow it. And so moving through that, you're not in limbo anymore. Your brain isn't in limbo. Your heart isn't in limbo. Your life path is not in limbo. Even if the path has not unfolded in front of, outwards, you at least realize like, oh, this is different. Everything is different.
Right.
And that can be unsettling too. But there's also always this feeling of, I'm just going to relax. Let me relax into this new perspective, because the tendency would, as you're saying, moving from Libra into Scorpio, it's a bit of a jolt.
Yeah, it is. It's very different energy. We go from air quality, which is like detached and cerebral, to water energy, which is profound and deep and requires that there is some sort of attachment, or at the very least, looking at the attachment with a magnifying glass. So that's how we begin the month, right? Like off the bat. So we move on to November 4th, which of course is the lovely and beautiful new moon in Scorpio, which is an invitation really to look at the shadow of something. And again, there's clarity. We know what we have to look at. We know what we have to work through, and there's still resistance. There's still resistance. And the reason for that is that we have a ton of planets in fixed signs. The fixed signs of the zodiac are Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and what did I miss? Taurus, Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, sorry. And on the one hand, those signs can have a difficult time with change. They can be incredibly stubborn. They can see only like tunnel vision, right? But that's on the lower manifesting area of those energies. On the flip side, the tenacity, the drive, the force of not leaving things undone and seeing things through, that's what those signs teach us. And so what does that tell us? That with this new moon in Scorpio, that if we are tenacious and that we fully accept everything that has come up for us in our world, in our life, and fully take responsibility for that, that there is growth and power there, right? Look, one of the interesting aspects of this new moon is that, yes, it is a new moon. It's the sun and the moon conjunct. Mars is right there, so it's requiring us to do something about the shadow that comes up. But all three of those are in opposition to Uranus in Taurus, like to the degree. This is a new moon at 12 degrees Scorpio, and they're opposing Uranus at 12 degrees Taurus. This is a new moon, but it has the feels of a full moon. Yeah. Immediately that tells you, in order for something new to genuinely begin, no bullshit, because Scorpio is no BS. Yeah. We need to end something radically. That's Uranus. Yeah, and it's what's really interesting, and while you were talking, I pulled some clarifying cards too, because the card that initially came up is really interesting for that type of energy, and it's the Two of Cups. Okay. But this makes me think of both the sun and moon together in Scorpio. The sun and moon are teaming up. There's also that soulmate energy. This is the sun and the moon together in this very shadowy, but there's also to have a shadow, you also have that light. Right. So it's that positive and negative, which again, you can't make it up, because we also have this balance. So we're going Libra, balanced energy, temperance, patience, take all the stuff in stride, 2 pounds of this on this side, 2 pounds of that on that side, trying to keep it going. And we've got this relationship, if you will, between the sun and the moon in Scorpio. Like, what does that look like? The positive side of that is, how are we balancing all of our karma? All of our karma. So twin flame energy, soulmate energy, this life mistakes, past life mistakes, things that you didn't learn, things that you wanted to learn, things that you are really tired of the universe showing you that you haven't learned, stuff showing up. And so when you say, it's this new moon, it's like a full moon. Yes, there's so much of this water energy, but it's also got that Scorpio sting. It's also got that I am fully exposed, standing in the moonlight kind of thing. And it's a new moon. There shouldn't be any light, but it is. It's the sun and the moon in Scorpio, and it's you face this way, now you're facing that way, now you're facing this way, now you cannot hide from that energy. And so what better way than to embrace that energy? Like, how do we
resolve, how do we reconcile these two aspects within ourselves? How do we reconcile those two aspects within a connection? You know, in the 5D, in the 3D, how do we do that? How do we connect? How do we reconnect? How do we balance that out for real, like real balancing, not like pseudo balancing, like, oh, I'll just pretend to balance it. It's like, no,
Exactly.
that time has passed. There's no pretending. The other two cards that came out with that when you were describing that energy too, is this is how that feeling can be, you know, be interpreted. Often it's just like chaos, I don't know what I'm thinking, all that stuff. So we can transmute that into this energy, like, let's actually have an open, vulnerable partnership in whatever it is, with ourselves, with the problem, with the obstacle, with the partner, with that thing we don't want to address, you know, the deep emotions. There it is. So it can be positive. It has to be transmuted somehow. We're not going to be able to skip over it. So
Right.
that's what I got.
I love that came up. And I love that you're touching on the two sides, and the light and the shadow, and the positive and the negative. And I,
Yeah.
I mean, we Scorpio energy is like that. It either loves something or it hates something, right?
Mhm.
Scorpio, fixed signs teach us that if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. They teach us that. And it's amazing. For Libra rising, that's amazing.
Mhm.
And so to learn to do that sometimes is necessary,
Mhm.
because it steers us away from just diddle daddling. And that's not going to be the case this month. It's going to be a month, and this new moon will, with that opposition to Uranus, and that card that you brought up with I'm sorry, I don't know the names of the cards, but with the girl with the
Oh yes.
with the blindfolds on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the chaos that it can feel, to that opposition with Mars and Uranus.
Mhm.
Uranus is the planet of the unexpected, of radical change that just happens. And sometimes we need that, you know, that smack in the butt, that cosmic smack in the butt, to really move forward. It's something, things are going to come up that we're really going to have to think about and say, I need to really make a decision about this, because things like this are, I really hope, I look at these things and sometimes I'm like, I really hope that I'm not exaggerating, but here's what comes up for me, that a lot of the decisions, or a lot of the things that come up in November, and we're going to see it the first week,
Mhm.
they're going to feel like decisions that feel life-changing.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how that unfolds. Please let us know how that unfolds for you. But I think that November is going to be one of those months where, if it doesn't happen, if you don't realize it in the moment, you're going to look back and say, November was the time that I made this decision. And that's why 6 months later, I'm on the other side of the world, or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And towards the end, you know, we spoke about, I've also used the runes, and the runes have popped up, the same 3 runes for what's coming up November, December, January, whatever. And we'll get back to that, but it's very much in that. So between the astrology, the tarot, and the runes, I think all signs are pointing that way. So yeah, it would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I can't, I'm excited, and then I'm like, ugh. But more excited than not. So that's still the first week of November, guys. So then we move on to November 10th. We move on to the second week of the month. And on November 10th, we have a really interesting time in the sky. So we have Mars coming together with Mercury, the planet of action coming together with the planet of communication and cognitive thought. That Mercury is creating a square to Saturn in Aquarius. Therefore, that Mars is creating a square to Saturn in Aquarius. So let's break it down. Mercury square Saturn. This is serious conversations, again, that have to be had. When Mercury squared Pluto, it was difficult conversations. Mercury squaring Saturn, this is about the internal adult within us who probably already had the difficult conversation. And now it's time to set the boundaries, set the limitations. This is a pressure of doing something about that which has come up, especially with that new moon in Scorpio. The Mars square, this on a more mundane physical energy can manifest in being physically tired. So be mindful of your body. Alignments with Mars can extend up to 10 days. So be mindful of that. The energy is going to be heavy anyway. If you work out, be careful. If you're driving around, just be careful, be mindful. But this is the discomfort of not doing something about that which our internal responsible adult knows we need to do. So this also creates what we call a fixed T-square.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, we have Mars, we have Mercury, we have the Sun in Scorpio in opposition to Uranus and Taurus. And on a third end, we have Saturn in Aquarius. All fixed energy. Yes. So what do you have for us?
Well, here's a delightful picture. You will get a kick out of this one. I'll wait till you, I don't want you to choke on your water. So,
wow.
So that is really specifically Mercury conjunct Mars.
Yeah.
Okay. It totally is. This is the 10 of Swords. This is where you are trying to gain mental clarity. There's a lot going on here, but it's a 10, and 10s are the end of a cycle. They're technically a 1 again. And so that reset thing that we keep talking about, how you're entering a new phase, as frustrating as this looks and feels, painstaking, thoughts, agonizing, difficult conversations, things that you might have been mulling over forever, things that you thought were the worst, most horrible thing ever. You're just done. I'm done with it. And what's interesting, the card that came up with that, because there's 2 planets, so I'm looking at Mercury and Mars together.
Right.
Oddly, it's the Fool. So we have 1, but it's 10, end of the cycle, and then 0. So it's that opportunity when you deal with that agonizing thing. I mean, even her face is just like, let me just get through this. Like,
right.
Whatever, like all those thoughts, all those things, all those items, she can't unknow it. But you can go in with a fresh idea. You can level up. This is, how do you take that and do your, as you were saying, those very adult conversations, those adult thoughts. It's not like wiping the slate clean and going back down a couple of levels, the spotless mind kind of thing. But how do you come out refreshed? How do you drop all that baggage and come through? You're at a different level. You can't unknow. You can't change the past. Right. So how do you proceed in a forward fashion without the baggage? And that's the thing that you have to face. You don't want this anymore. It's done. And I don't think anybody ever wants it, but they've been able to hold on to that for a long time and tell themselves all kinds of things. Right. Reasons why, oh yeah, it's not that bad, or it's such and such, or I can't deal with that now, or it's all there. And so there we go. And the Fool is like, ignorance is bliss comes to mind, but when you're willfully doing that, it's very difficult. And so it looks like a really pleasant card, but there is all this stuff hidden under the surface. But how do you take those steps forward without being consumed by this fear, right, of all that programming from the past.
Right.
You know, the cynicism and the pessimism and the, you know, you might call it realism, but how do you don't create from that place. You don't improve your life from that place. You have to go into this, and it's not a fantasy world, but it's like, how can I create a more pleasant experience knowing everything I know? And that's a huge challenge. We don't want to end up like this again.
Right. It's so interesting. I think that something that's going to help you folks out there is be mindful of what came up for you the weekend of October 30th and the 31st. So this weekend that we're recording this, the reason for that is that the sun squares Saturn. The sun in Scorpio squares Saturn October 30th and the 31st. So that by the time that Mercury and Mars get there, that's the time to take action. But the sun illuminates, right? The sun with its light illuminates that which we are resisting, that where we are not taking full responsibility. And then come Mars and Mercury, it's like, nope, you gotta. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that come November 10th, if we are still resisting, this Mars-Mercury conjunction in Scorpio can make you just say the most awful, harsh words to someone else. This is what's coming up for me right now as I'm explaining this, is when we are in partnership and we know what buttons to push on our partner, we know the things to say that are really just mean, mm-hmm. and vice versa. So pay attention if that's something that comes up, if that's something cruel and harsh comes up like that, because is it true, or are you projecting, or are you being projected on? Mm-hmm. Okay. So on another note, go ahead.
It's you know, when you look at this is all the hands coming from the outside towards the person. I mean, we might be one of these, we might not be this person. We right. we might be all of those to somebody, making somebody feel that way. You know, that's the feeling that I get. It's not pleasant at all. And it's funny too, with that Mercury square Saturn, it's really odd that there's two of the same suit here also, which is pentacles or discs, and that's the Earth's energy. Taurus is also Earth energy. Right. And it's, you know, when you look at the positive side of something, it's this opportunity, there's an offer, there is abundance, there is the, you know, all those powerful things that Mars and Saturn bring, you know, power, assertiveness, sometimes even aggression, right. You know, the big corporations, all of these things moving forward, like in a very profound way. And we have the beginning of finances, like financial stability, or the beginning of abundance, or an offer of that, you know, things that were stagnant, all of a sudden, there it is. But here's the very interesting counterpart to that, which is this barrier with our finances and our material things and our place of residence. We put up a nice little barrier, and it's like mine, and greed and aggression and, you know, all those other things, putting on a facade, all that kind of judgment. Whereas this is this very happy, pleasant, but determined feeling.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot of duality this month in, you know, how do we take those things that come in, these aspects that are joining forces there, and then there's an opposing force. Right. And so it's like that with everything that we're dealing with. So we're joining forces with something, even joining diverse elements, and then those two things combined are opposite some other thing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, I I hope we're not coming off, or I'm not coming off as like doom and gloom, but it's very real. If we show up, Mars and Scorpio, courageously towards the shadow, bring it on, show it all to me. I have no idea what this means. I have no idea how to fix it. I have no idea, but I'm surrendering to you. Lead the way, universe, spirit, guides, angels. This is another level of growth.
Mm-hmm.
This will show you the power that lies in persevering through the shadow. If we again encompass, if we fully accept, radically accept everything we are, then that first card with all of the hands poking in, as tiresome as that can be sometimes, if we stand fully within ourselves and say, this is my shadow and I'm not particularly happy with it, but I'm going in it with the help of someone else, there's nothing that an outer influence can really do or say to shatter you once you stand in your own shadow.
Yeah.
Because you've got you know you. This is really, this is about evaluating the weight of something that we want. I want a healthy relationship, therefore I have to accept my shadows of codependence or being jealous or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
The weight of that healthy relationship that I want means that I have to go through this. Yeah.
And again, it's funny that you say that. So that one with all the hands and the, you know, knitting needles going into the brain. The next card up is the Page of Swords, but then we have the Knight of Swords. So really Mars squaring Saturn are these two cards here. And so knights are they're all champions of things. They're all champions of their suit. So how do we transform that feeling of the 10 of Swords with all that anguish and agony and wherever it's coming from, whether we're doing it to ourselves or it's coming from all these other angles?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this Knight of Swords takes one and decides to run with it. I'm going to go do this with it. And what am I going to go do with it? I'm going to have mental clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm choosing to cut through. This is cutting through the BS,
Mm-hmm.
all of the BS, my BS first, everybody else's BS next, my environment, the people I deal with, like cutting everything out. And then there we are, mental clarity, the keys to the universe, shining the light on everything. You know, we've got the key, and in many decks too, we always have this spiral, this Fibonacci sequence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like a circle, it goes up. This is how you grow, but it is a spiral. So you revisit things now from a different perspective. You go around again, you deliver it from a you know, revisit it from a different perspective. So that's kind of that not so gloom and doom vibe as we come through. Like harness that energy, harness that harshness, and
Right.
put it to good use. Put it
Right.
to perseverance, determination. Learn that thing that you kept putting off. It's going to bring you to the next level that you know you have to do in order to move to the next level.
Right.
Yeah. So sharpen the brain tool, you know,
Right.
it is like they're air signs. So they're all about intellect and communication.
Mm-hmm.
The challenging thing sometimes with this Knight of Swords is to watch what we say again. So when you're saying something as a knight, think of all those positive characteristics of a knight. They're chivalrous. They stand up for something, you know, there's integrity, accountability. So it's, you know, choose your words carefully. If you're going to stand up for something, don't just slash about aimlessly. You're going to do something, defend something,
Right.
Then don't be aggressive, be assertive, be formidable. So there.
I love that card where yeah, they're just sitting calmly, and they're knowing they have the key.
Yeah.
They have their key. It's like, this is all I need. This is what I know.
Yeah.
That's lovely. That's a really beautiful card.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We all have our key if we actually just go and unlock it. That's where the shadow part is. If we're not addressing it, we can't unpack it. Like, can't unpack all that stuff.
Right. So we move on to November 13th, which is Mercury again. And mind you, by this point, Mercury has already entered Scorpio. So we're thinking deeply. We're not thinking superficially. We are having profound conversations with ourselves and with others. And this Mercury in Scorpio will oppose Uranus and Taurus, again, November 13th. And this is an aspect usually of surprising news. Information that for some reason, especially with that Mercury retrograde of October, that may have been delayed, information we didn't have, something that we thought that was going to take longer might come up. So that aspect in itself perfects on November 13th. That opposition perfects, but because of everything else that Mercury is doing, the conjunction to Mars, the square to Saturn, and then in opposition to Uranus, Mars is going to be extremely active that second week of November. So again, watch your mental bandwidth, because this is fixed energy. Make sure that you are clear about what really deserves your time, energy, and effort. The intensity of this energy can be tiresome. So that opposition of Mercury and Uranus can be energy of very much all or nothing. And I think that this is because of what you just mentioned, Susheela, that clarity that comes, that spark, that like, oh. And if it doesn't come from within us, let's say that this has to do with relationship or a job, something happens where you're like, that's the answer. With Scorpio energy and this thin veil of this 3D and 5D connection, highly, highly, highly suggests that if you're looking for guidance, that you ask for it. Because chances are that second week of November, if you're genuinely asking from the heart, believe me, the signs will come. The answers will come. They will come unexpectedly. They will come from places you didn't realize answers could come from the least expecting person. And it's what you need. Remember, Uranus creates radical change by just doing it on its own. It can feel intrusive. It can feel like someone coming into your house and cleaning your house, like without permission. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, yeah, I get it that you cleaning my house is nice. It's good. Thank you. But this is really intrusive.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, so we have those swords doing stuff, charging forward. We also have then the magician, and the magician, we might have cast a spell, so to speak, put out a wish, put out an intention months and months and months ago, but we were not a vibrational match to that thing.
Yes.
All that other stuff happened, all that heavy stuff, and it's like, it's never going to happen, and this is horrible, and everything sucks, and everything's slow, and everything's heavy, and then now I'm being catapulted forward, and then boom, surprise. Oh yeah, I remember when you said that thing and you wanted that thing. Boom, there it is, right there. And there's been a delay. Like, you cast this out once upon a time, and then now it showed up. And you might not even be a vibrational match to it anymore. Like there were wheels in motion. There might be something and you have to look at it. And the other card that popped up with that is the Empress. This is, and these are both major arcana cards also. So they are big, profound things. They're not little mundane things. These are the magician in the big picture, how you fit into the big plan, not just your plan, but how does your plan fit into the universal plan? All the other people, your past lives, their past, like the whole thing.
The whole
And
thing.
all the stuff that you asked for. So it might not have been just 6 months ago. It might have been what you came here for type of energy. And so then the Empress is receptivity. It's the divine feminine. It's passive energy, which is very opposite to the Mars energy. So 1 minute we're charging forward, like, yeah, let's go, let's get our stuff, the stuff that we want, the no BS. And then we've got the Empress, and the Empress creates stuff by being receptive. So you're going to exhaust yourself if all you do is charge, 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 charge.
Yes.
Talk, 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 talk. There's a point where you have to sit back and say, okay, I've put it out there. There's my magician. I've waved the wand. I've made my intention. I used my mental clarity. I cleared all the muck. I did all that stuff. And now I'm ready to receive. I feel worthy to receive the stuff that I have asked for. I've cleared all the baggage. I mean, maybe nobody's cleared all the baggage, but we've cleared away, we've chipped away some of the big, heavy stuff. We're not able to bring it forward. And this is such a positive card.
It's beautiful.
In that moment. And, you know, as we get into just about it's the 13th. So we're just about at the middle of the month there. And it's just like, yeah, you can take a breather and kind of put your feet, you know, ground yourself and see what are we actually manifesting. And you can tweak the vision. It's not written in stone, but, you know, as you say, there's those surprises, you know, so be careful what you ask for at this point.
Right.
Be careful what you say, you know, all that. You will be able to harness a certain amount of power to put things forward. So all that time that we were trudging through the quicksand, trying to manifest something, and it wasn't going, we're still used to pulling that weight at this point. Now you add the mental clarity and you get everything, you're unhindered, but you're stronger now. So now when you bolt forward, you're like, wow, oh, that was fast. Oh, I just manifested that. Oh, maybe I didn't really want that. Okay, be careful. That's pretty much what these two together mean in that aspect. So.
I love that. I love that because it's a few days away from the lunar eclipse in Taurus that we're going to experience, which we'll get to in a second. But that is an event ruled by Venus. And so this transformation of feminine power and our willingness to say, I am deserving of much more. And to truly believe that and actually implement the necessary boundaries, the necessary habits, the necessary steps to solidify and support that belief system. I deserve to be in healthy relationships. I deserve to make more money. I deserve, and to come from a place where our actions, because again, Mars is so involved, match that belief system, and not to the point where we're overextending ourselves, that we are doing, yes, what we need to do. And from a place where we know we are deserving, therefore, that feminine receptive quality is also in action.
And it's again that feeling of balance too, that Mars energy, that active yang, masculine, warlike energy versus the receptive feminine, they're equal.
Right.
One is not strong and one weak. They're both equal in potency and they work together to create that balance. And so I think a lot of people maybe misinterpret the passive receptive feminine energy as like doing nothing. But it's you need a fallow period for things to grow. You can't be putting energy into something continuously. It needs that time, that nurturing time. You put forward, you clear everything, you go do the stuff, little steps, whatever it is, big steps, little steps, however you want to organize it, 200 pieces, 3 pieces, and then you allow it to do whatever it's supposed to do. And that's that balance there. And with that Scorpio energy going on, they're deep things. Like, they're not surface things. These are deep, deep, deep emotional things. And so if you can only balance 2 things, it's 2 things, but it's big progress.
Right. And something that you mentioned earlier, before I go on to the following week, is which touched me even personally, is that the things that we thought we wanted a few months ago have changed. That Mercury retrograde did a lot, don't forget. And this is where we get to the root of what our soul actually wants. Right? All of a sudden, the definition of why I want more money has nothing to do with money, and it has everything to do with my sense of worth. Can I trust? Can I trust that I am enough? Can I trust that there's enough momentum?
Yeah, that's the, as I'm probably ahead of what you're going to say next in this case, but it's as we going from what we just were into the Mars opposing Uranus, we have discs going there. So that juggling and that balance of the 2 of discs, little infinity symbol, it can be precarious, and it can be, this is how do I balance this? What I wanted, what I now have, what I have to pay for, what I need, what I want. How do we balance all of that? And it's limited too, for the moment. There's a limitation imposed on it.
Yes.
But simultaneously, you did plant seeds earlier on. You are able to reap something. And that's, again, goes back to one of the runes that I'll talk about later. But this is growth here. It's growth. It can be growth money. It can be growth relationship. It can be growth within the self. But it's that step of like, I did plant some seeds once upon a time. I did make steps. I did make strides. So not to get bogged down with all the stuff that wasn't working lately, and how we might have changed our direction or changed our perspective. It's not lost.
Right.
That effort, that self empowerment that came out of it, it's not lost. We're just rearranging those pieces to find a new balance there. That's all it is. And it's nice that it's that little infinity symbol, because there is no wrong move. There is no mistake. There's always a way of rebalancing everything. You create a void, it gets filled.
Right. That's really beautiful. If November 13th brings clarity and news, surprising news, with that opposition to Uranus, I think we're going to see a lot of that, especially like in global news. Like, a lot of things are going to come up, and because this is the axis of money, I think that a lot of surprising news about money, cryptocurrency, banks, something is going to come up about that. But we move into the week of the 7th or the 3rd week of November. And that is going to be, I feel, a week that brings up more news. But November 17th, we have the Mars opposition to Uranus. So the Sun did this on November 4th, and Mercury at this point would have done that on November 13th. So both the Sun and Mercury by the 17th would have already opposed this Uranus. Now Mars is here. So this is Mars and Scorpio. This is secretive, strategic action, and they're just gonna see what's coming. I'm gonna let my results speak for themselves, right? So this Mars opposition to Uranus can feel, again, this energy of harshness, right? I don't think that the universe means to be harsh. I think that it just wants us to get the point.
Yep.
So both Mars and Uranus are very physical planets. Uranus is actually the higher octave of, I'm sorry, no, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, not Mars. Either way, they're still very physical, somewhat volatile. Mars in Scorpio it's in its ruling sign, so it's very forceful energy. I have to say this because it's very traditional astrology, and sometimes the most perfect manifestation of astrology is the most literal one.
Mm.
Whenever we have a connection between Mars and Uranus, we have to look out for accidents. Just be mindful. Please don't stick this in your head and say, oh my God, they said I'm going to have an accident. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that this is energy that is available and that you should be mindful, right? So more than that, this is a radical cutting of the cord with the past. Radical. That is Uranus. Radical. How? I don't know, because Uranus is unpredictable, but Mars in Scorpio is forging ahead. Yeah.
Exactly what you said. So some clarifying cards that I pulled out there while you were talking, that is turning your back on something that you maybe thought was very valuable at some point in time. You know, if you ask people sometimes, why are you still doing this? And they'll say, well, I put a lot of effort into it. I put a lot of energy into it. Is it serving you right now? No, not really, but I put a lot of effort into it.
Right.
But there's also a sun over there on the horizon. Whether that sun's going up or down, it doesn't really matter. It will cycle around once again. Either way, it's pretty. So you're leaving something behind, yes, but there is something also over there.
Right.
So that is like similar to what you're saying. And then we also have the star in connection to that, partially being tethered, but again, there's also something up there that's optimistic and positive. So they're similar also in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, the light up ahead,
Yes.
and you're still being anchored to something, or you're walking away from something, but you're looking towards something else.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it can be drastic, but then, you know, your feet are on the ground. Like you are able to have some form of grounding, some kind of tactile, physical tether.
Right. Right. You've got you. You've got you. Come back to you. Come back to the things that you've seen and you know you can unsee. Have that radical honesty and acceptance of what is, and understand that that which has felt familiar and continuous for a long time, there's going to be some kind of separation if it's no longer serving you.
Mm.
Right? So we move on to November 19th, where we have the lunar eclipse, the first eclipse of the Taurus Scorpio axis. It's a full moon eclipse in Taurus. It's ruled by Venus. This marks a moment in which, on a more very real, very 3D reality, it has a lot to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot to do with how we perceive money. What is our relationship to money? How do we manage our money? So for those who are not good with their finances, you're going to have a really big wake-up call in November. It's necessary. It's necessary. This is setting you up for something greater. Remember, this is just the first eclipse of this Taurus Scorpio axis. We have 4 more next year. Whatever unfolds, they just started doing construction work next door. Sorry. Whatever unfolds, whatever comes up, will have a direct correlation to the results we see next May. This is a new moon eclipse. Interestingly enough, I'm sorry, a full moon eclipse. This is, again, that feeling, that notion of like the beginning of an end. And so we have to really be clear about our priorities. What is important? What isn't? Right?
Interestingly enough, it's always fun.
Yeah.
The card that shows up, look at that moon there. This is the High Priestess. This is peeking behind the veil. This is like, maybe I knew some of this stuff. And again, all that shadow stuff, it keeps repeating, you know, all that shadow work, all the things that you didn't want to address, you know. So when you're talking about finances, you know, do you just have a stack of empty, you know, envelopes sitting there like that you're not opening, just pretend that they're nothing? You know, do you owe money? Are you organizing things? And then there's the reason why you do things. What's the big reason why you do the things you do? Is it just to get, oh, I want to make X amount of money a year? Oh, I want to do that because I want to buy a house. Why do I want to buy a house? Do I want to, you know, there's all of those deep, deep reasons. And, you know, she's peeking out behind these curtains, and these red Scorpio, you know, these strong Mars and Scorpio colors. It's like fire and passion and water. And it's, I can't, I couldn't design a better card for this exact
Everything.
position. Yeah, it's
element is in there.
everything. And, you know, as we're, I mean, it's not the right moon, but in a way, it's almost like it's, you could say it's an eclipse, you know, crossing, right? And that eclipse is also, you know, something gets covered, something is veiled, something moves past. And, you know, looking forward, looking to that future, what are we uncovering? And there's an element of our intuition in this as well. So all of those deeper things, as we pull off all that stuff that hindered us, all those heavy emotions, all that baggage, all the past programming, and we begin to allow and receive and simultaneously take action and allow to receive, there's this feeling of reciprocity, and it's a two. And again, we've had how many twos show up here? So it's always this balance. Somehow it balances, or the seeking of balance. And your intuition will get heightened as you clear all that other stuff as well. So then learning how to trust, how do you navigate that? And people will often not use their intuition when it comes to money. It's either they're doing it well, or they're doing it badly. That's kind of how we think. Like, I'm a good money manager, I'm a bad money manager.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so how do you navigate that, such an earthy, tangible thing, with your intuition?
Right. I mean, remember, this is the reason that this is a lot about money is that in our physical world, money is important. Money, it creates value. We do stuff with money, but this is a full moon in Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus and Taurus have to do with money. They represent the second house of the zodiac, which is about sense of self-worth and money management. And so, again, we're going to see a lot of stuff about money, especially globally. But this is, again, like, how do I value myself? And do my priorities, the priorities in my life, the thing that I give all of my precious energy and attention to, because it is precious, is that in line with how I value myself? So it's a full moon eclipse. It will be heavy. It will be heavy. But I think I don't know. I think it's great, honestly. I think I'm not mad at it. I'm looking forward to being faced with something so clearly that I can't turn any other way, right? And just deal with it. Because I know for certain that once I deal with that, the other side is better, is I'm growing.
And then, we also have the number 2 there. So when you say second house, there is also that. And that's, the high priestess is a number 2, the magician is a number 1. So the magician is like the masculine energy again, and the high priestess is the same kind of energy. It's that intuitive manifesting energy, whereas the magician is casting the spell, making the intention, taking the action, doing the thing, bringing the lightning down to the water, whatever it is. And the high priestess is the other way. It's the receptive way. It's the creative way. How am I doing this? How am I processing this? Why do I feel the way I feel? Why do I want to feel this way? So it's got more of that watery, it's watery like Scorpio, but then we have that strong, death and sexual energy of Scorpio. But then we also have that moon energy, all happening in, and we're balancing all that out with our, again, this is feminine, and then we have our masculine magician working hand in hand. So you're setting forth your intention, you're casting your spell. You can't just keep doing that all the time. At some point you need to receive as well, and that value. These are very opulent curtains. These are heavy but opulent. They're not flimsy. These are big things, and there's a big fancy ship over there going through our deep emotions, but we can ride this properly. It's not drowning. It is successfully navigating that. It's not somebody, holding on to a flimsy raft.
Right.
Or a lifeboat. This is a big fancy ship with big heavy curtains. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a lovely card. That card has a lot. It says a lot.
Yeah. And again, it's like I couldn't pick a better card to describe that exact energy. So
right.
There you go.
So we move to November 20th, where once again, Mercury, doing all kinds of things, squares Jupiter. So anytime that Mercury has a connection to Jupiter, we have to be mindful, regardless of whether it's, regardless of what aspect, harsh or not, an exaggeration of us, putting our foot in our mouth, promising more than we can deliver, exaggerating the nevers and the always, right? This is especially true with Scorpio energy. We can go there. We can really go there. So watch your words. The beautiful thing about Jupiter is that it will always be the optimist of the zodiac. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It's the planet it's the planet that reminds us there is expansion. There is always growth. There is always something beyond the horizon. There is always something beyond our reality. There is always something to look forward to. You just have to be willing to be open to it. And that's really beautiful. This is also a planning aspect. So Mercury in Scorpio is sharp. It's concise. These are the 5 points that I'm going to cover in the speech, and you do that so well and eloquently and just to the point. I need to go through A, B, and C to get to D, and this is how I'm going to do it. It's very strategic. Jupiter in Aquarius, Jupiter is saying if we want to be expansive in a new way, Jupiter expansive, Aquarius new. Mercury, we have to be concise. We have to know what our priorities are. Work around those priorities, right? So it's a lovely aspect. Take advantage of it, because even though it's a square, use it to be inspired. Squares create action from discomfort. But if something is making us uncomfortable and we sit with the discomfort and say, okay, if we're procrastinating, right? We feel incredibly uncomfortable when we procrastinate. And I know I should be doing this, but I need to do chores for the 5th day in a row because, you know, the house needs to be clean. That discomfort, if we can just sit with that and say, I'm procrastinating right now because maybe I don't feel I'm good enough, but I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to act from a place of where I know my worth, and I don't have to do anything grand. I don't have to overpromise and underdeliver, but I'm going to do something about what's coming up.
Mm. Well, interestingly, I'm going to work in reverse a little bit. The clarifying card I picked from a different deck is the Tower.
Okay.
So it can be, people are afraid of this card because it feels like devastation, catastrophe. Oh, I'm going to plan this thing and it's going to go blow up in my face.
Mm-hmm.
In order to build something new, just think of it like a house. You want to build something new. You're a new person now. You've come out of all this other stuff. You need to create something new. Sweeping the floor of the old house is not going to do it. We might have to take down a few walls.
Yep.
It might look destructive. Okay, so having said that, the card it was clarifying from the other deck was the same card, actually. So what I pulled earlier and what I pulled while you were talking was the Tower.
Oh my God.
So it's also holding on to, you know, she's holding on to this thing, not wanting it to be taken down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's those feelings of like, again, that feeling of, well, I put so much effort into this, now
Right.
I have to, whatever.
Right.
And so all of those, this can also be all those old patterns and habits. But I always procrastinate and I always get it done in the last minute.
Right.
It's comforting to me.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it does need to come down. Maybe it really does need to come down for me to move forward. And what we have moving forward is also interesting. There's the devil, and those are those little temptations, those codependent behaviors, those self-sabotaging mechanisms, the self-indulgence,
I'm getting goosebumps.
there's all those little things, and she's just looking back there, and there's spider legs in the background, but they might as well be, you know, it could be a scorpion tail at this point, like,
Uh-huh.
you know, come over here just for a second. I think I need help, and then
Right.
you know,
Right.
and that's what it is. And you have these two together, and it's like, what am I clinging on to? It doesn't have to be destructive, but it does need to be thorough.
Mm.
Talk
Yes.
about being concise.
Yes.
Then interestingly, the other card that had come out with it was the Ace of Cups. And usually that's about love pouring forth and the beginning of love and the first sign of love and all of those things. But it's also about opening your heart. So that devastation is not permanent. As you say, there's a cycle to it. There's optimism involved. So you clear out all of that, and guess what? You have a clean slate. Open up, whatever it is. Open up your heart. Look for the positive thing. Create something new. You've torn it all down now. Here's the opportunity. And the Ace of Cups isn't just about romantic love. It's about the heart chakra. It's like, how do you approach everything from that place of love? So you want to create wealth. It's your heart chakra. Create it from your heart. It's not going to be horrible. Relationships, obviously. But what about those relationships that you have to interact with? Those people you have to interact with who you don't like? Can you go from that place? Can you tear down the old stuff and not be tempted to keep the old pattern and then go from this place? That's what I got for you.
That's it's amazing. I got goosebumps because you talked about the heart chakra. So one of the things that I want, it just feels very appropriate to mention it now. We, like I mentioned earlier, we are like coming back to conversations, thoughts, intentions that we had back in Leo season.
Mhm.
Leo is the sign of the heart. It is the only sign that of the fixed signs that is not, nothing is transiting there during the month, right? Perhaps when the moon transits Leo, whenever that is over the month, and that's going to be like 2.5 days, that's when we'll have a fixed cross. But the fact that Leo is the only fixed out of the 4 signs that isn't taken up by energy as forceful as Mars, as Saturn, as Uranus, as all of those guys in Scorpio, Taurus, and Aquarius, means that everything that is happening around that energy is affecting our heart, is affecting our alignment to what is meant to really bring us a genuine sense of joy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about so many heavy things, right? And essentially, it's really about getting to the sense of joy that isn't measured by anything outside of us, that isn't measured by anything tangible, essentially, but this joy that comes with full acceptance of what is, and understanding that there is power and peace in that, and that, yes, life will be life. But if we can come back to this joy that isn't necessarily happiness, right? It's not that. It's this coming back to self. So just a little Astro 101, when again, any of the signs, any of the elements are taken up, and one of those signs is not, in this case, again, 3 fixed energies are taken up, one is not. All of that energy comes out in the unoccupied sign, which is Leo, the sign of the heart. So this is all happening so that we can get in touch with our heart's desires. And so this is so appropriate to what you mentioned earlier about what we thought we desired a few months ago, perhaps during Leo season. We hadn't gone through all of that Mercury retrograde into where we are now. It's different. The definition of what brings us joy is different. And the more we peel off the layers of the baggage, the clearer it becomes. That less is more. Right?
It totally is. And it's funny because, you know, you're talking and I cut the other deck for a clarifying card, and I get the same card again, which is the devil in a different deck.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, the things that we thought we wanted can often be not good for us.
Right.
You know, they can be the quick fix, the addictive whatever, the addictive relationship, the high, the immediate, the instant gratification, all that stuff. It's not going to cut it anymore.
No.
It's not cutting it at all. And so the only way is like, what is your heart's desire? Was it all of those things? Those were all false things. And it's not false because somebody else says it's false. It's false because you don't feel it anymore. It was something in the way of something else, something you thought you wanted that was going to give you that feeling. But now you're just going straight to that feeling. You're going straight to the heart chakra, the deep stuff. And you can only get there after you cleared all that other business out of the way.
Exactly.
See if we can get a close
Love that. Yeah.
You know, her cup there is just love. She's not even looking at all those butterflies coming out of it. They're illuminated. You know, there's the reflection, the self-reflection. Yeah.
Lovely. So we move on to the last week of November, and we get a little bit of a breather. We move into Sagittarius season. Thank goodness. We move into the optimist of the zodiac, the sign of, some call it miracles. We move into the season of looking towards something, looking towards something different, especially after those first 3 weeks of November, coming out of it with a sense of gratitude, thanking ourselves and the universe that we looked at what we needed to look at, that we were honest in ways that we haven't been before. And so we have the sun going into Sagittarius on November 23rd and Mercury going into Sagittarius on November 24th. Them being a few degrees apart, technically they're in conjunction. And soon enough, they both make a conjunction to the South Node in Sagittarius, which is at its very last degrees before it goes into the Taurus-Scorpio axis, right? Before that South Node goes into Scorpio in January. So the sun and Mercury coming together, anytime that any planet comes together with the sun, it's a new cycle. Like a new moon. When the sun and the moon come together, it's a new moon. When the sun and Mars come together, it's a new 2-year cycle for Mars. When the sun and Mercury come together, this is a new vision. This is a new phase of, or a new outlook, a new perspective. And in this case, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, this is an expansiveness. The connection to the South Node, which since May of 2020 has represented a shift in perspective, not by traveling the world, not by looking for our purpose anywhere else other than ourselves. I mean, think about that. Think about how the South Node represents a transformation of some of the qualities of that sign. Sagittarius represents travel. We haven't been able to travel. We haven't been able to travel because usually, I mean, I know that I've done this. I've traveled to find my purpose. I've traveled to find myself. And now I realize I never needed to do that. If anything, I was probably avoiding certain things. We had to stay home. And we had to change that perspective by being present, by living with our stuff. And here comes this sun connecting with Mercury, this new cycle, this new perception. And we look back and say, holy shit, it's been quite the ride the last 17 months. I've changed a lot. Yeah. I have a new perspective. I have a new outlook. It's a shift in perception that is meant to help us evolve.
And that perspective, I mean, really, it comes from here. We are perceiving something. We're not perceiving something over there. Everything we do, we are perceiving from here. We are perceiving from what we touch, where our feet stand, what we hear, you know, all of that stuff. Perception is happening from our focal point at all times, you know, whether it's, you know, through our subconscious mind, through our eyes, ears, whatever those senses are. So interestingly enough, I should stop saying that because, you know, it's just a given at this point.
Exactly.
But we've got the Page of Cups. This is a youthful energy. It's emotions again, but it's playful, it's juvenile, it's not irresponsible type of juvenile, but it's coming at it fresh. What do you have to show me? There is a goldfish in my teacup. You know, it's playful. That imagination, that daydreaming part. There's also that abundance. If we were going at things from our heart, knowing that we can have anything, create anything, and we're not going at it aggressively with that active, destructive kind of Mars energy, and we turn that and we transmute it, we've got the Nine of Pentacles. We have everything. It never runs out. I have everything. You have everything. They have everything. Everybody can have everything because it's the perception of creating that abundance. It's the perception of the lack or the perception of how arduous that process is. And this is like the happily ever after card. It's, you know, looking to the future. There's all this deep stuff, you know, if we look at the card like this, if I block that off,
right,
you know, they are the couple, the positive, you know, the positive, negative, the dark and the light, the couple. They're even the way they're holding hands, they're linked up like an infinity symbol. and they're looking into the sun.
Mhm.
The sun is shining on them, but then below the surface, they're, they're fish. It's a mermaid and her mer husband. Their little school of fish under the surface. There's so much underneath as well, but they're intertwined and they're connected, and it's emotional. Cups are all emotions, and they're the things that feed us and nurture us, and it's our heart. Again, it's all heart chakra stuff, and it's the divine masculine and the divine feminine linking up again, and it's bringing us into what's coming up in the next several months.
This is
Higher
a lovely card. I love that card.
Yeah, it's a higher vibration. Again, it's that spiral, how do we keep going, revisiting those things and coming out again? So we have 10, we have a completion and a starting over.
So I want to touch on something. By this point, Venus will have already entered Capricorn. Capricorn is its mythological symbol is the sea goat. So it has a fishtail, which represents Capricorn's ability to look beneath the surface, very similar to a water sign. Very similar to a water sign, interestingly enough, for an earth sign.
Yeah.
And gain wisdom to then make something real out of that wisdom into something tangible, into something material, into something real that is then meant to help everyone else. So that card is that Venus and Capricorn, because by this time, Venus will have already entered its pre-retrograde shadow, which means that by the end of November, everything that has to do with Venus and Capricorn, with Venus and where Capricorn is in your chart, all of that is going to come under review come December, January. So you said it, that card represents that which is going to continue to be mulled over the next couple of months. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that Venus retrograde in Capricorn is a big deal. It's going to touch Pluto 3 times. So this ability to go beneath the surface, to see what's under there, to grow spiritually from that, because beneath the water is of spiritual energy, and to make something out of that in the real world, something meaningful, something that is aligned again with our hearts. Right?
I don't know if now would be a good time to mention those runes that keep coming up, because I think it kind of is cohesive in this. So the ones that keep coming up, we've got this one, which is Jera. It does not have a reverse. So interestingly, the 3 that pop up recently all the time do not have a reverse meaning. So Jera is, we reap what we sow. And it's karmic also. So similar to what we were saying earlier, you did plant seeds. They were viable seeds. You're not digging up the seeds constantly to see what's happening. You may have forgotten about them, just like tulip bulbs in the fall. They're going to come up in the spring. And that feeling is there, and it's underlying everything that's happened August all the way through. And we may be now going, well, didn't I plant maybe some stuff is popping up, whatever it is, your cover crop, I don't know. Something's popping up. The other interesting one that is showing itself all the time is Ing. And sometimes it's just shown as a diamond in the middle, but it's also representative of birthing something. It's different than the Berkana, which is just a bee in the runes. This is the actual, you can say the birth tunnel, it's that union of those 2 elements together, and we're coming through something. And it's like you want to create something, you want to give birth to something, and that's pleasant and that's wonderful and that's nice. And you and I have spoken about this. That process in itself, although beautiful, is challenging. Giving birth is a challenging process, and it's taken time to get there. It doesn't happen overnight. And once you come out, you come through that doorway there in the middle, you come through that doorway, and you might be in a harsh environment. You might not be, but you've come through that door and there's no turning back. And so even if that's simple and easy to come through, you know, my mother will tell you she had the easiest birth, but then the next 18 years were not so easy for her. But that's the thing. We come through this door. It's not like, woo, everything's pleasant and peachy on the other side. We've come through a process, and it's a continual process. Now, the other one that's shown up, and this is just so timely for pre-winter, is Isa, which is ice, and it solidifies things for a time. So you want to be able to, if you are reaping what you've sown previously and it didn't show up too well, then maybe right now is the time to plant some things that are going to come up after the winter, because astrologically too, they are going to be doing their thing.
Exactly.
So the end of this month is the time you should have cleared all that stuff that's hindering you. You should have tidied up a lot of things, your finances, your relationships, your inner thoughts, your beliefs, your perceptions. All of it needs to be dealt with, because you're going to start putting something forth that's going to be sort of incubating or frozen for a time before it thaws again in a few months.
Yeah, and how interesting that we are entering at the end of November, this period of, like you said, like now we can be much more intentional about the seeds that we plant, because we have gone through all of what November has brought up. And so, and obviously prior to that, but you know, since we're talking about November, the end of November does give us that opportunity that, again, we may not see overnight, we won't, but come the spring, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So we move on to November 28th, where we technically, the conjunction between the Sun and Mercury again actually perfects. So this is a new cycle. This is on a very mundane level. This is a great day for announcements. This is a great day for launching. This is a great day to start something new, to plant those new seeds, right? Now, we still have to be mindful of the fact that we're in the middle of eclipse season, and that we are moving towards the second eclipse of the season, but the last eclipse of the Gemini Sagittarius axis, which won't happen till December 4th, but that's where we're headed. So again, this theme of the beginning of an end, it's a new moon eclipse, and it's the last eclipse that we'll experience in December of those signs.
Mm-hmm.
The entire month of November has been the beginning of an end. Yes or no? This goes, this stays. So this theme continues. And by the time that we get to the end of November, the Sun coming together with Mercury is indicative of a new cycle. And it's this, again, this expansion of thought, of perception, of who we are. And the ability to see that from a bird's eye view, from a much bigger perspective, which ideally we have worked through the entire month, and even before that. Mm-hmm. That new vision that we're meant to have about ourselves and our lives and purpose and a lot of heavy things won't come easily. Mm-hmm. Right?
That's the thing.
It's important.
You go through that new door and you don't just arrive and now everything is, you know, whatever that happily ever after idea that we've been sold, well, what do? Who takes out the garbage, and who sweeps the floor, and who has to do the repairs, and who has to pay for the repairs, and where's that contingency fund, and who's working to put the money to pay for the like, there's all that stuff. That happily ever after is not just like you walk through the door and it's done. You walk through that door into a new space, and all of these things have to be done and maintained and perpetuated and make us happy and content and grow and learn and all of that stuff. And the two cards that I have for that are in this deck. It's a feminine figure for the King of Swords, and that's typically Aquarius energy. It's intellect and thinking and broadening the horizons and harnessing information and being able to discern which information is pertinent and all of that stuff. So we should have learned that by the 28th, at least to a better degree than what we had before. And we also have the Emperor. And the challenge with the Emperor is there's this omnipotent masculine power. Do you control your subjects, or do you help navigate? And that's a challenge. You have all this new information. Are you going to dictate, or are you just going to use it on yourself? Are you going to teach by example, or are you going to be a tyrant?
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest themes for the South Node transiting Sagittarius since May of 2020 has been the letting go of this self-righteousness that we all carry, right? One of the negative traits of Sagittarius is self-righteousness, to the point where it's like, I know what I know, I believe what I believe, and that's that, right? And there's nothing getting through that. And so perhaps that's a good question to ask. Where has my self-righteousness in whatever place in my life, where has that gotten me?
Mm-hmm.
And am I still functioning from that? Or can I be humble enough to say, no, that didn't work. So I need to do something new. I need to try a new approach, a new perspective.
Yeah. And hopefully, like going back to the very first card, which was the Hangman, seeing things from that new perspective, seeing things, from the inverse, seeing things from that place of limbo, seeing things from the receptive stance for a change.
Right.
What do I do when I receive all the information? Well, that looks different. Instead of the active doing. Where am I not allowing myself to receive?
Yeah.
It could be receiving another viewpoint. It could be receiving abundance. It could be receiving, there's lots of different things that we could be preventing ourselves from looking at that objectively. It's always subjective. That perception is always so, but then if you change your position, you're looking at it from a different angle. Therefore, your perception is now different.
Right. And I want to just put this out there, just in case it isn't clear. This isn't work that we have to do by ourselves. This is really heavy energy. And if anything, I would not suggest that you just go through this heaviness on your own. Part of being receptive is believing that we deserve help. And so to seek it, to have someone hold space for us, it's a way we gift ourselves. This is really heavy energy. It's going to make us ask ourselves questions that maybe we have asked in the past, but now we're really, really having to not just ask them, but answer them. We have to answer to ourselves.
Ultimately, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's, what I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed it as well, is that collectively we're all going through this together, which is even the way we're describing these energies from two different perspectives. It's the same story. And everybody has a version of this going on. It's affecting everybody together. Therefore, we are all connected to this. So part of that shift in perception is, yeah, looking at it from somebody else's viewpoint, or allowing somebody else to help you with their perspective. From their perspective, it looks like this. This might help you, you know.
Yes. And it's like I said, it's important to say that, because again, a lot of fixed energy in the air. Fixed energy, the fixed signs of the zodiac can, again, on the one hand, be incredibly determined, and on the other, be hyper self-sufficient. This is the way I've always done it. This is the way I've always dealt with it. This is the way I always. It's like, it doesn't work anymore. You're miserable right now. You see that, right? So that's why I brought that up. It's important. Yeah.
Well, that's all I got.
That's all I got. We did it. We did it. We recorded it.
Yes. Apparently we have. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we will work out the kinks, and Mercury will not be poking around in our technology the next time we do this, and
right.
Everything will go very smoothly, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. As always, Susheela, this is an honor, a pleasure always. For all of you guys who, I mean, thank you so much for the support on that October episode. Yeah. I mean, close to like 300 of you. That means a lot. That's so cool. And we hope that you enjoy this as well. Please share with your friends, spread the word, like and subscribe, all of the good stuff. And we will be here in December.
Yes, and thanks, Millie. I always learn so much about all the planets and all their inner workings. It's awesome, and I love the way that it connects to the tarot somehow when we never plan it like that, which is just amazing to me. So
it's beautiful. It's exciting. I think that adds to the excitement of making these podcasts, that we're like, all right, this is what we're going to talk about, but I don't know the cards. It's exciting. I love it.
Yeah, super fun. So yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks everybody. That it was overwhelming and humbling that so many people did come out for that first one. So yeah, super awesome. Okay, thank you.
Bye guys. Thank you so much.